Okay, good evening, everybody. Sorry I am a little late getting this thing up and running. Hopefully, it's starting to come through on everybody's platforms. Let's just make sure that it's coming up here. How's everybody doing so far on this beautiful Wednesday today? All right, I can see we got Facebook up. If you're in here, go ahead and give me a hello. Let me know that you are watching. I hope that everybody's had the chance to settle in for the day. I know that it has, for myself, been a very nice and long day, but I am so grateful to get the chance to be here with you guys tonight. Everybody else is a little busy at the moment, but I've got the opportunity to come in here and share something with you. So while the rest of you guys make your way in and get going in here, we are going to pray and get in the right posture before we go any further with this. So, Father God, I thank you for your peace. God, I thank you for your clarity. I thank you for wisdom. Lord, I thank you that this platform tonight would be used for your glory, that what you would have to say would go forth, that it would plant seed, that it would bear fruit, Lord, and that it would be good and healthy fruit. God, I thank you for all the people that tune in tonight. God, I thank you for all the people that tune in down the road. Lord, I thank you that they would find something in this that is imperative to their life, that you would speak to their heart, God, and that you would help them along this journey that we are all on. So, Lord, I thank you for this opportunity for you to speak, that it would be your words that go forth. And I thank you, Lord, that you would do something awesome in this time frame tonight. All right. Hi, it's me, Johnny, and we have been on an awesome journey through Joshua. Last night, Pastor BJ took us all the way up and into chapter 20. And chapter 20 was really awesome because it dealt with the refuge cities. And there was a really awesome message involving who do you lean on when others have been leaning on you. I got something really good out of that because I, for a long time in my life, have been a sounding board for a lot of people. But that also means that I, in turn, don't always get the opportunity to find a shoulder myself to lean on. And this was a good reminder that if I have the time with God, that's really the main shoulder that I need. So that one was really, really good for me last night. But we didn't get the chance to look at Joshua 18 or 19. And I'd spent a little bit of time in preparation in that passage. So that's what I want to share with you guys tonight. So if we look back, we can see that in Joshua, we see the Israelites, this next generation is coming into the promised land. They have to go through a whole process just to even get in there. 12 and 13 is dealing with the account of the 33 conquered kings. And if you tuned into that message, that was really fun listening to the pronunciations of those names in itself. That's a really lengthy chapter of just a study in verbiage, really. Chapter 14, we begin to see the division of the land starting, and Pastor BJ talked about that with Caleb and him asking for his inheritance and his blessing. And he was one of the first to step up and say, I am ready for what God has promised me. As we moved into chapters 15 and 17, we see more tribes beginning to receive their inheritance, which brings us up to chapter 18 and 19. There is a remainder of the land that is needing to be divided. And there's a total of 7 tribes that have yet to move into their inheritance. But what's interesting with that is how this whole passage starts. So let's go ahead and take a look at 1 and 2. It says, now the whole congregation of the children of Israel assembled together at Shiloh and set up their tabernacle of meeting there. And the land was subdued before them. But there remained among the children of Israel 7 tribes which had not yet received their inheritance. So if you remember previously, the Israelites had set up camp at Gilgal, and they ran all of their operations out of Gilgal. But now, a couple of years down the road, we actually see them moving the tabernacle into a new location. So why does this matter? The moving of the tabernacle signifies the center of God's work moving locations. It moved over time. It did not stay fixed in one position. You can actually look back at the previous journey through the wilderness and how they had the tabernacle in the middle everywhere they camped. They followed the ark. They followed God. They were constantly following God throughout this process. And then where God would set up camp, that's where they in turn would set up around him. So now we see a period where they've been established. They've been out in operation in battles, and they have been using Gilgal as their center of operations. But now all of a sudden they move to a completely new area. So what's interesting about that is if you apply that to your own life, where you've had God's center of operations set up in one location in your life, or you've only been operating out of one location in your life, but God says it's now time to do something different. God does not stay stationary when he is working and when he is moving. The season that you're in, it might have been good in that time, but God is not wanting us to remain stationary on this journey that we're in. And I'm sure if you look back over the course of your own life, you can see how you've followed God in this process of growth that you've been going through. If you just stayed stationary in one spot worshiping God your whole life, then not a lot is going to happen. There's forward motion, forward progress needs to be happening, not just in your worship, but also with God. So God moves the tabernacle. They move to a new location. I can see in the lives of people that I've been under their leadership, how God has moved in their life, how God has given them things, and then how things have been removed and they've been asked to wait, and then they get more later. It's interesting how you can sit there in one spot and think that everything's going to be just fine, but that's not growth. That's not progress. If I was just to remain on the other side of this screen listening the whole time, then I wouldn't have been able to get to this stage where I'm actually being able to speak the word. I'd just be receiving and I wouldn't be pouring out. Look at the different seasons of growth and the different locations that God has operated in your life. And I guarantee you that those seasons of change require quite a bit of uncomfortableness as you have to get out of your comfort zone, because there's a trust factor that's involved with that. You're now leaving the known and going to the unknown, which is scary. But if we're trusting in God, like he was commanding these guys to do the whole time, be strong and be courageous and trust that God has got this. So if you're not moving forward like the Israelites, then we see some ramifications that happen because of that. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to be the case in your own life, but I can speak from personal experience that when I've become stagnant, when I've become stationary, then I'm not able to accomplish in my own life what God has set apart for me to do. In this case, the Israelites are not moving forward to finish claiming possession of the land like they were told to. God told them, this is your land. This promise has been set aside for you. There is battle, there is effort that's required on your part to be able to move forward to take this, but it's already set up for you to take it. Now you just have to step out in faith and go do it. But for some reason, 7 tribes of Israel did not do that. They actually just kind of roamed around like nomads instead of actually claiming their piece of land, their inheritance that God had for them. Ooh, so where have you been roaming around in your own life when God has given you permission to go take something? Where have you decided that you were more comfortable not being grounded and that you'd rather just be doing your thing rather than doing what God has asked you to do? In this case, God was real specific to the Israelites to go move forward, go claim the land, go rid the land of these Canaanites that have inhabited it. But that's not what happened. They decided to roam around instead. Let's go into verse 3. So Joshua turns around to the children of Israel and he says to them, "How long will you neglect to go and possess the land which the Lord your God of your fathers has given you?" So they straight up neglected to do what God had done for them. They neglected their inheritance. They lacked the courage and they lacked the faith to drive out the remaining parasites from the land. So now, because of this, before the Israelites were a united army that went from place to place to place and conquered. Now the people have been kind of split up and they've managed to take their own territories. So we see some division. They're not a unified front like they used to be. Now it's going to be on each tribe themselves to go in and claim their portion of land, and they've got to do it on their own. They don't have all of their friends helping like they used to. So if the neglect to be obedient then makes it harder to receive the inheritance, what does that say in our own lives? What does that say to you when you know God has been talking to you about doing away with parasites in your life? You might not have Canaanites or Hittites, but you got parasites. You got things that are clinging on to you that don't belong there, and God has pointed them out. And you can try to pretend like that's not the truth, that it's easier just to remain in your current situation or your circumstances, but you know that God has told you to move forward. God doesn't want you to sit there and be stagnant. So there's a point where we have to quit neglecting to be obedient to what God is asking us to do. What is God asking you to do? Is God asking you to eliminate addictions from your life? Are there things that you're watching that God's been asking you to put down? Are there things that occupy your time that God says he wants that? Where is it in your life that you have been neglecting to move into the promise that God has for you? From experience, it's going to take longer to get to that promise, and it's going to be harder to actually step into it. I know from my own experience, as a kid, it was prophesied over me at a young age that I would be doing this. Essentially, this is nothing in comparison to what God has said I'm supposed to do, but this is getting there. But because I chose to neglect the calling that was on my life, to neglect to be obedient, to do what God had asked me to do, I brought more hardships onto myself. I delayed the promise and I delayed the blessing that I was supposed to have. And what I could have been doing 20 years ago, I'm doing now. I'm not knocking that by any means. I love the opportunity to witness to you guys and give testimony. But man, if I'd have been obedient, how much different my life would have been. Now, the cry of my heart is obedience. I can't neglect to do what God asked me to do. I have to be faithful to move when he asks me to move and listen to what he is saying in that case. So the enemy that has been hanging out in their territory, what do you think the enemy was doing the whole time that the Israelites did not come in and kick them out? The enemy cements himself in there. He builds up firmer foundation. He entrenches. He gets himself fortified so that when you do try to remove him, it's even more difficult than what it could have been. Back when they first came in, the enemy was in fear of them. But now they've had around 5 years to just sit back on their laurels and not worry about it. So where is it that the enemy has been setting up camp in your area? Where is it that you're supposed to be marching in and taking over? Where is it that you need to go in and start breaking some chains and moving in deliverance and freedom? The parasites that they're dealing with really just remind me of sin. It really does. It's sin that God told us to remove from our lives. But if it's such a struggle, we tend to leave it alone and let it just kind of exist rather than dealing with it. It could be someone that you've got in your life that you know you're not supposed to have a relationship with. And it's easier to be comfortable even though you're not comfortable than to have the confrontation and to deal with that thing. It's easier to just let it slide and let it keep going. What was easy in the beginning, when you were fully committed, when you were on fire, now it's just there, and we learn to live with it. You know, if you had a tumor and you knew that tumor could be cut off, would you not go and get that tumor removed? Or would you just decide to live with that because it was easier than taking the steps to go and get a ride and go to the doctor and schedule the appointment and get the biopsy done and go through all the steps to get it removed, when in the long run, getting that thing removed from your life is actually going to be the most beneficial, probably even life-saving thing that you could do. But is it just easier to live with it or to actually go do it? So I think we're a lot more like these tribes than we care to admit. I wish that I could tell you that I'm like the first batch that just goes marching in and takes the land, and now I'm living in promise. But that's not been the case in my life. I've done things the hard way more often than not. And that's why I got all of this. And I'm not even that old, man. It's because I've been around the block a couple of times now. Don't get comfortable in just getting by. Instead of having to fight to get the victory and the promise, it's going to involve sacrifice. Don't take up the mindset of, if it's going to cost me, then forget it. It's important to know that all of this struggle that we're going through, all of the battle that we're going through, it involves struggle. But that's a good thing. Struggle is a good thing because that also means that you're going to go through growth. Me and Pastor BJ mentioned it last night about having that firm foundation. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago about how that tree, when it's in the storm, when it's stimulated by the wind blowing it around, the roots grow deeper and cements it into the ground. Its foundation becomes firm because of the storms that it goes through. And the same is definitely true for us. The more that you go through, the stronger your walk and your foundation is with God. So again, what we think was going to be easy when we were fully committed and on fire now seems like a real fight because we've gotten a little lackadaisical because of it. Don't allow sin to get that kind of foundation and that kind of foothold, because once it gets cemented in there, it's a lot harder to break free from it. So let's look at verses 4 through 6. So Joshua tells them, "Pick out from among you 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them, and they shall rise and go through the land, survey it according to their inheritance, and come back to me. And they shall divide it into 7 parts. Judah shall remain in their territory on the south, the house of Joseph shall remain in the territory on the north. And you shall therefore survey the land in 7 parts, and bring the survey here to me, that I may cast lots for you here before the Lord our God." We are, all of us saints, everyone who's a believer, has a mission from God. You have a calling to be a witness and to minister into other people's lives. The survey of the land was man's responsibility, and the division of it was God's. Your job is to go out into the land and survey it and take account of what's going on, and then God will take care of the next steps that's in it. Our job is to survey, to describe, and report what's going on. That also means that if you're my brother, then I'm probably going to call you out on something that you're doing if it's not godly or if you need to be corrected in it. That's something we're supposed to be doing as ministers, is lifting each other up and taking care of each other. That goes along with having that shoulder to lean on. You might be a shoulder for somebody else, but somebody should be providing a shoulder for you too. You should be able to go out there and be able to see what's going on in the lives of your friends and your family, and be able to minister to them, and know that God will give you the opportunities and the doors. If you're actually investing the time, he'll make a way for you to make an impact, because that's what it's about. It's about getting out there and making an impact. It's about changing lives for the kingdom in whatever manner and form you can. It could be something as simple as a smile. It could be something as big as teaching and preaching. You don't know where God's going to take you. I'm speaking from example on that one. I never knew that I would be in this position myself. With going out in the land and taking a survey on that, I got some notes here. So we are all called into ministry in one form or another. You are not called to just be a Sunday morning pew warmer. I hate to break the news for you, but you are called to do something much larger than that. You are called to make a difference. You have a job that only you can do. You have an impact that only you can make. You've got people that you can talk to that I would never be able to reach. And I, in turn, have people that I can go to and I can make an impact in their lives that a lot of you would never be able to even see. But that's the point. God has given you testimony. God has given you opportunity so that you can make a difference in somebody's life. When you are actually out there doing the work, when you are doing God's word, when you are living that life, people see that and they want to start to know what it is that you have that's so much different from them. How is it that you can wear a smile every day that you go out there? How is it that you can turn around and show me that kind of love when I didn't deserve it? And then you get to turn around and tell them about Jesus, who loved you so much that you got to turn around and show them the love that he has for you. I seriously want to stress with you guys to not be like the 7 tribes who decided to wait for something to happen. You've been told to make something happen. You've been told to go. I guarantee you that you might be in a season of waiting, but it's only in preparation for the going. That's a fact. You will not be stationary when you are living a life of service for the kingdom. So please, I implore you to not hesitate on moving into the promise, into the season that God has for you, in claiming your inheritance and moving into what God has spoken over your life. It may not all come in one Powerball ticket, but I guarantee you that over the course, you will see the blessings, you will see the inheritance, and you will see God move in your life. When you're obedient and when you actually do what he tells you to do, instead of neglecting it to say, I'm a little comfy in this position right now, God, so let's do that tomorrow. Or, you know what, God, I'm just going to go do me right now because I can't put this bottle down. Then just know it's not going to be so easy to put it down when you want to. It's going to be a lot harder at that point when you're actually trying to step out, when you've been negligent to be obedient. So I don't have a lot for you guys tonight, but what I do have is solid. Be obedient. Listen to what God is telling you to do. Be in prayer. develop that firm foundation so that you can move into the promise. The promise and the inheritance that God has for you does require struggle. It just because he said it's yours doesn't mean that you get to sit there and wait for it to happen. You don't stand there with a shovel and wait for a hole to appear. You have to put in some effort to get that hole. The same thing's true with moving into your inheritance. It's going to take some effort. I guarantee you that you're going to be uncomfortable, but you get to do it with God. So if you're doing it with God, then you can know for a fact that it's going to work out. No, I'm saving Lazarus. I'm going to leave you with one other little sidebar. All right. We see constantly throughout the Bible where God immediately answers prayer, where people are immediately healed, and where we have that word immediately stressed to remind us of how faithful God is. But at the same time, I want you to know this, that what you're praying for doesn't always come the way that you think it should. It doesn't show up the way you want it to, or the way that any of it does. It's not always the way that you think it's going to be, because A, maybe that's not what God wanted for you. B, maybe that's not how God is answering it. Or C, maybe it's just not the right time. And that part right there is probably one of the harder ones to grasp. Not that he didn't answer it the way that I wanted him to, because if he answered it, then I know it's going to be good. Or that maybe he didn't give me the answer in the right time frame that I was praying for it. What if, though, when I'm praying for it, nothing happens? That's a real struggle that I think a lot of us go through when we're so used to the word immediately in our vocabulary. We are such a society of instant gratification, with our attention spans down to 30 seconds and then on to the next. It might just be possible that what you're praying for, God doesn't move in that moment. And that can be a real painful scenario. It doesn't mean that he didn't hear you. It doesn't mean that he isn't going to answer you. It just means that he's not answering you right now. And I just want you to know that that does not mean that God is not on the move. That's really important to remember, that God is still on the throne. He is still faithful. He will answer your prayers, and he'll answer them the best way for you also. But just be patient. Be patient. Hold on to what God has said. Yeah, so stop trying to dictate how we want God to answer our prayers. When God moves, he moves, and he moves in a mighty way. I am living proof of that. But please, don't be negligent to what God has asked you to do. Stay in prayer. Stay on that solid, firm foundation, and keep pressing forward. Don't stay stationary, because if you start getting stationary, you get comfortable and then you don't want to move. Guys, that's all I have for you tonight. It's brief, but it's definitely to the point. You all know, Transparent Church has their links in the bio. If you feel like you would like to support the ministry and what they are doing, it is good ground. I will tell you that. I've been connected to this ground for a while, and it is solid ground. So, guys, thank you for always being so awesome in your attendance. Thank you that you turn around and share this message, bless somebody with it. I love you guys. Thank you again. So you all have a blessed night, and Pastor BJ, I'll have something really good for you tomorrow.